and now with the high wing designing airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
And,
we'll be talking about that soon.
Yeah. At that time, I was completely resistant. I thought, oh my God, that's not what we do. But I kind of picked up the high wing ball and ran with it, really in my spare time, working at night at home on my laptop. And
what's been your favorite part of working for Sonex all these years?
boy, I would have to say variety. I love the fact that I can be doing two completely different things or more within a day, within a week, from 1 month to the next, and the ability for growth. I mean, I've personally grown more than I ever imagined I would. Once we get the two-place jet kind of wrapped up, really hitting high gear with the high wing, and working with them to get that moving. But we started talking about a high wing in loose terms. Well, the first time, years and years ago, was an idea that Jeremy had brought up. This was probably maybe 2010, 2011 time frame. And then at that time, I was completely resistant. I thought, oh my God, that's not what we do. And then, he had kind of a sketch that was kind of homely looking. And then, back in 2016 timeframe when we were doing the B models, we were discussing a high wing concept again. And John had sketched up something that was a little sexier looking. We kind of got tabled because the B models at the time were kind of lower hanging fruit, if you will, and the improvements that we definitely wanted to make to the legacy Sonex and YX and eventually the Xenos. But I kind of picked up the high wing ball and ran with it, really in my spare time, working at night at home on my laptop, and taking sort of John's sketches and some of the other sketches that people had done, and kind of getting it into a reality case where, okay, well, you can't position the wing there, and it can't be the on paper sketch that was originally done. It was really, really hot looking. I think that the top of the wing would have been maybe about 4 foot tall. So like, well, that's not necessarily going to work. So, actually getting it out in CAD and getting things laid out dimensionally and with doing a proper weight and balance and trying to estimate structural weight. And then, since then I've, got pretty much the entire main wing spar designed, and some of the internals, and just think how things are going to go together. And like everything, it's been an evolution. Again, in my spare time, we were probably going to hold it closer to the chest, maybe till the two-place jet was flying. Our competitors, our friends across the street at AirVentures had Tuesday of the show, and we started hearing details about it, which there are none, and so it kind of got my goat a little bit.
Here's a picture with some plywood, and that was it.
As far as I know, they aren't disclosing whether it's going to be a tandem or side by side. They haven't made that decision yet. And that kind of stuff. And I love those guys. I know Van and Ryan and everybody, and work on EA, safety committees with them at EAA and stuff. And they're a great group, and they run a great company. But I was kind of like, wait a minute, I've been working on this and toiling away at this thing, and I know exactly what it's going to be. And so I guess maybe we should talk about it. So, even though it's still a couple of years away, we feel like, okay, we need to talk about it. We need to get a following going, which is what we did with the 1X. We got a mailing list started and started publishing, updates periodically, and kind of getting a fan base and a following, and then turned a huge number of those people into kit orders when it was time.
Yeah.
That's kind of the strategy that we've been following.
Yeah, I'm on the list.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, RVs are great aircraft. I don't want to take anything away from them. They really are, but they're building one of them, at least for the foreseeable future, is out of my reach. And a lot of people like me, you got the mortgage and the kid and all that. It's not really something you can do until much later in life. And so when they made the announcement about a high wing, I was like, all right, what would the Sonex approach be? I look at it as, my Sonex is, I spent, I don't know how many years thinking, oh, I could never own an aircraft myself. I could never do this. But, the Sonex philosophy and my particular one made that possible.
Yeah.
And so take that a step further, I still want to build. So then you have, the high wing, and then you take the Sonex approach. It seems doable. I mean, we'll see how everything works out and where we are in 2 years, but yeah, it's on the top of my list.
The thing about advanced aircraft, like you said, it's a major commitment of money at the very least, and time, unless you build buy a pre-built RV-12 or something, and it just isn't reality for a lot of people, and that's always been our philosophy is the reality check. That's the little red check. You only have so much money, you only have so much time. How many weekends are there in a year, and how many of them are got family commitments and work commitments and bad weather. Our kits, in terms of the base prices of our kits, they're not all that far off of the pricing of Van's kits, but the secret sauce is that you don't have to add a lot more expensive stuff to it to finish it, and whether that be tools or engines. People ask us all the time, and they've asked certainly with the Highwing announcement, especially with Mosaic coming down the pipe with expanded LSA rules, well, are you going to make it even bigger, the 1,320 pounds? Are you going to make it so that we can put Continentals and Lycomings? And the answer to that is no, because it just drives so much in the design of the airplane to put those big motors in. One, they're not that much more horsepower. And in some cases, depending on which engine you choose, it's less than what's available with a Jabbler 3300 or 130 horsepower UL power engine. And they're heavy. I mean, so for power to weight, you've got a much different ratio. They're really heavy. They got to swing a really long prop, which means our gear has to get taller, which means that our tail draggers get more difficult to fly with a taller main gear. So it just isn't part of our formula, and it's certainly a cost driver, a major cost driver. Even if you get a used engine that still has some time before overhaul, everything, all the money you have to spend to buy it, to install it properly, to maintain it, is far more than the cost of these smaller, newer generation engines that we've been using for the last 20 years. And that's still a major part of the formula that keeps it affordable, but while at the same time retaining the performance. And we watched the engine market in general. I mean, we always have. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff out there, but we don't ever want to be on the bleeding edge of a new engine. And so, things like, the D motor, for example, is a really intriguing engine. Certainly anything lightweight turbo diesel is really interesting, especially for our unmanned market, because there's always a demand to be able to burn Jet A for those unmanned vehicles. But we're still waiting. There just isn't that much that's really quite real, at least not yet. Just like us with the AeroV, there's a lot of them. I mean, fully half of the flying Sonex fleet worldwide is either AeroV or Jabbler 3300, because those are provided support for first from day one. But again, the AeroV is a fully mechanical system where the pilot has direct control over the engine.
We touched on it a bit. Why don't we just jump right into that Sonex high wing design? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so like I said before, it's been kind of my baby for the last 5 years or so, where I really kind of took the ball and ran with it. And it was important to me that we designed the next airplane with the most mass appeal as we possibly could, making it a little bit less of a niche airplane than Sonexes typically are. And to me, that means better useful load, obviously. And so that's what we're doing with this, giving it a few more feet of wingspan. We're up to 26.3 feet of span, and the full 1,320 pounds that's currently allowed for light sport aircraft, although that will be increasing. The rules will, not the airplane. And then shooting for a nice low empty weight. So we know we're going to have some structural weight gain with the extra wingspan, and the tail's a foot longer, and tail surfaces are just slightly bigger to drive the bigger wing. Things like, the high wing cabin versus the low wing cabin. There's going to be some weight gain. I'm really trying hard to shoot for a 720-pound empty weight, which is going to give you really good useful load and a lot of choices. I mean, there's still going to be flights where you're going to have to decide on a really heavy passenger versus maxing out the baggage, or
that's reality. I mean, even if you fly a 150, or especially if you fly a 150, do you have a passenger or fuel?
There are very few airplanes out there that you can just load up to the gills on every flight, and that's just reality. But this by far will have the most useful load of anything we've ever put out there in the market before, and I think it's going to have a better useful load, or at least very competitive with a lot of the other airplanes that the Sonex High Wing will compete with. We are giving it an opportunity for AUX Fuel, which people have done AUX Fuel in Sonexes before. We've never done a factory option for it. Typically, we only feel it's a good idea if you're doing a really specialized trip, like going up the Alcan Highway. We had a guy who would make regular trips out to the Bahamas, out islands, and long water crossings. And yeah, of course, it's perfectly acceptable to do AUX Fuel for that. But again, it comes down to keeping the systems simple. And with a low wing airplane, now you're talking about a transfer pump of some kind. With the high wing, basically the concept is we have a center section wing, just like the subsonics. And instead of landing gear folding up into that center section wing, we have space for a couple of small fuel tanks, just 5 gallons per side, rotationally molded, no Pro Seal and all that gunk to worry about. And it'll just be a really simple gravity feed. Just open the valve up by your head on each side, and gravity feed into the main tank after you've depleted the main tank enough.
And that can make all the difference in the world. We plan for the best, but sometimes nature, and especially in some of these back country areas, nature decides what it wants, and it's better to have as much fuel up in the air as you can than what's left on the ground. So I mean,
certainly it's enough fuel you can flight plane a longer trip, for sure. The range on this thing ought to be upwards of 900 miles on a full load of fuel, versus about 6 something in a Sonex. Now the reality check of that is, well, how long does your bladder last, and do you really want to pee in a bottle? Maybe not. Of course, with the high wing, it'll be easier to I don't know, rig up a funnel in a tube or something. But whatever. I don't want to get into those gory details. But it's just one of those things. It's been a popular customer request, and so why not fill some of that demand?
Yeah.
And with the high wing, will certainly be expanded in utility and gross weight, but we're still going to get really good performance out of the smaller class of engines, at least, if not going to some of the larger versions of that class of engines. So we'll still be, I would say, cost-wise, it's going to be, if I had to guess, it's going to be pretty competitive with what it would cost to build our Xenos motor glider, somewhere in the maybe $40,000 to $50,000 range by the time you're done building the airplane. Of course, depending on how you want to equip it, avionics being the biggest variable. But,
I mean, my little MGL gauge is an old, I guess, a copy of an MGL gauge of AOWare or something crapped out recently. And I was like, oh, okay, I can put a G5 in. It's like, nah, forget that. I got an MGL Blaze, $450 done. That's all I need. It's a day VFR plane. So. Right.
Yeah. The highlights maybe I didn't discuss here is that, we are moving the pilot's seat back about 2 inches, and the wing moves as well, kind of with it. And that all kind of works out nice since the tail is about a foot longer. And that's all driven by, of course, the moments required for the expanded wing area. But moving the wing and the back and the seat back helps us to keep that nice streamlined shape with the high wing, and also it's going to give more foot room. And then of course with this rectangular box that is a high wing cabin, we're going to be able to get, especially if you're really tall in the torso, we're going to be able to get 6'2", 6'4", maybe taller people in there with no problem.
Well, and I can tell you, even small, tiny people like my wife will appreciate that extra headroom too. She's not a big a fan when the canopy comes down on her.
Yeah, I mean, some people can get a little claustrophobic.
Yeah, a little bit.
This is being a cantilevered wing. Of course, it's going to have the main spar kind of in front of you.
Okay.
And so, we will have a skylight. The main spar might actually be a little bit of a reduced height when it goes through the cabin. We're working on some of the calculations on the spar for that now. But, so we're doing as much as we can to retain as much visibility as we can, even though it's still a high wing. But the windshield comes up into the bottom of the leading edge of the wing, kind of like a heliocourier. I don't want that to restrict the visibility. Maybe we'll have a section of plexiglass on sort of the top portion of that leading edge, that D section, so that you can still kind of look in front of the spar and up. So we'll just see, what looks right, what feels right, and we'll get into that when we start building cockpit mock-ups. I think our first one will probably be plywood. And just kind of get a feel for ingress and egress and site picture and all those kinds of things.
I don't know how often you check the Sonex Builders forum, but I was thinking I'd share some of the. I made a post after you guys made it official. I put a post up, and there's been some good comments. I figured I'd share a few with them now. See what your reaction is.
Yeah, all right.
Papa said he would buy that kit today, and I hear you.
I wish I could sell it today, but that's what happens when something when you're still working.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned Kip earlier. He said he had to check the date, make sure it wasn't April 1st.
Yeah, right.
Graham said the same thing, but he also added, like, he could have helped with the copywriting when the release came out. He said, the Sonex High Wing has been introduced to save interminable build hours spent trying to fit the low wing canopy. I agree.
Yeah. I don't care what kind of airplane you're building. If it has a bubble canopy, it's going to be an issue for a lot of people. And plexiglass, it's tough to work with.
Oh yeah, yeah. I that is not a job I want to have to do again. It was cool to be on the backside of it, and just every little bit affected the rest of it, and just how you had to work through that. It was a good learning experience, but I don't want to do it again.
Well, the B model, I will say the B model canopy bows make a huge difference.
I've heard, yeah.
They're so much easier to fit a canopy too, and the canopy looks a lot nicer when it fits up with the turtleneck really, really nicely.
So Peter Anson said, "Bah, high wings." He likes to see where he's going when he makes a turn.
Right.
Well,
that's why you have a skylight.
Yeah, and that's what when we fly the Rans S7, that's what. Just bank harder. Bank harder. You can look through the top.
Yep.
Yeah, you can look over the top and see where you're going. I love that. That's real nice.
Yeah, and that's a classic example of why we're coming out with a high wing, because you hear it all the time as a pilot. There are high wing people and there are low wing people. Mm-hmm. So let's say they're somewhat evenly divided. That's half of the marketplace that we've missed all these years. So, trying to expand the scope of the Sonex marketplace, and there'll be people who say, "Bah, a low wing. I don't want anything to do with that."
Yep.
So maybe they'll be more inclined to build a Sonex.
Don said he realizes the high wing may not be as sexy as the current design, but neither is he at 77.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a big thing, just being able to get into the airplane, and that's why the doors are nice and long at the bottom. There's a lot of high wing airplanes out there where you have kind of a vertical A-pillar, if you will. Mm-hmm. And although it's a little bit more of an engineering challenge, having that angle is really important for getting in and out of the airplane, especially if you have some restricted mobility. Mm. It's very much like the way the door of a car is designed, and that was the goal. So you combine that with a center stick or a center column with a Y-stick grip, and you've got an airplane that's really easy to get in and out of. Yeah. Now, I know people are going to scream for conventional dual sticks between your legs. And although it will add weight to the structure, We'll probably do something for those people with the high wing. Yeah, we got to look at it, make it so it's not kind of Rube Goldberg in terms of how it attaches, because we'll still have the center column with a torque tube, and that's actually how we get aileron control to behind the seat.
Well, I mean, that's a big reason why I bought the plane I did, is because it had the center stick. You know, you didn't have the two sticks to fumble over trying to get in, and that's, all day long, the single center stick, I'm all for it. So
if your trunk is a little bit bigger, you're maybe not the typical 170-pound pilot. When you pull that stick all the way back and it's between your legs, you feel something, and so that's another advantage of the center stick for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I've been the 170-pound pilot since early high school. So yeah. John Gillis wanted to know more about the removable wing sections. Of course, he's gotten into gliders a lot lately. He said it's similar to the subsonic. So let's talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, so the subsonic system is interesting. It uses bolts, a good number of them, both on the top of the spar and the bottom. And although we want the general construction and layout of the airplane to be the same, I want to make that wing attachment method different. And without going into too much detail, because the engineering isn't all figured out exactly yet, we'd like to do some kind of a knuckle arrangement where it'd be basically two large bolts or pins, one on the top of the spar and one on the bottom. And then, of course, one bolt for the rear spar. And that should make it a lot easier. We'll continue to have shear pins like we have on the jet. And although they may not even really be necessary from a shear loading standpoint, they will help. But more importantly, they'll help to index the wing. So you'll be able to put the wing on there, and it'll stay put while you're driving the pins in. And we have a lot more work to do on that concept, but that's really been my goal all along, is to have a nice, like a rectangular hinged access panel on the bottom of the wing, on the inboard wing, and be able to get at the top and bottom pins really easily. For builders that want to use bolts instead of pit pins, we'll of course have an access panel in front of the spar to be able to get a nut on those bolts. I know all the conventional thinkers out there, and anybody with a standard aircraft handbook and at their side is going to say, well, the bolts should be facing rearward, but that doesn't work because of the curve of the D-tube section of the wing. There's no way to get a bolt in there in that space. It would have to be the pins or the bolts would have to be installed from the rear, which is fine. It's common on a lot of airplanes, including the B model Sonexes, and it works just fine. Really looking forward to having a pretty easy wing installation and removal system, at least as easy as a Sonex or YX or Xenos, maybe even easier.
Yeah, I mean, with the indexing pin, I'd say that's even easier, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, I think that'll be good, because there should be a minimum of having to have somebody at the wingtip kind of going up and down, back and forth. We'll try to minimize that, and it will be like John Gillis has mentioned in his post. You could probably easily come up with a rig, like a sailplane rig, to hold the wing if you're trying to make it a one-man job. Just it'll be taller because it's high instead of a wing.
Overall, I'd say the community response is very positive. A lot of favorable attitudes on the useful load increase and the ease of entry. Sexy is a word that's used quite a bit.
That's good. I mean, that's the thing is, to take a Sonex and turn it into a high wing. Some of our early drawings that other people come up with are not pretty airplanes at all. So, it was really important that we retain the lines. And I think in a lot of ways, the high wing can even be almost a little bit better looking than a low wing Sonex, especially from certain angles and such. So yeah, we think it's going to be a really nice looking airplane.
Based on the dimensions, I don't think it can happen, but is it going to be like a completely separate kit, or would you be able to convert, say, a Legacy or a B model to a high wing?
No, it'll be a completely separate. I mean, it's literally a clean sheet design. It uses like a B model fuel tank, and it has the basic B model sort of forward fuselage dimensions, if you will. But we'll have bubbled out doors to give people extra room.
Cool.
Got to work out the details on the back of the door sill and how that works. In our rendering that we published, you'll notice CAD-Man doesn't have any seat cushions. So when we actually build them up, we'll see like where does your shoulder really actually go with regard to the door, and what do we have to do to the B pillar, if you will, to give extra room than what we currently have in the Sonex. So there'll be some things that I've got some ideas, some tricks up my sleeve to
all part of the process.
Make sure that we truly are giving more cockpit width. It will, of course, have a center console, like I mentioned, for the controls, kind of an armrest console like the two-place jet. But there's little things we can do in terms of where the push rod goes through, and making sure that that console is sculpted so that you're not losing any space available between occupants. You just won't be physically touching, but you'll still be right up next to each other.
Hey, that extra 4 inches, I think, would make a difference. When I flew in the YX, I had to kind of lean back, put my arm around the guys. Like, I promise, I'm not trying to get fresh with you, but that's the only way we're fitting.
Right. And there's some things we can do with an adjustable back on the seats.
Cool.
That it's kind of like what we're doing with the two-place jet. That we'll be looking at for this, especially because we are pushing the pilot about 2 inches further back. Now we're not moving the panel back, just the seat and the wing. So that'll give, I think, a lot more breathing room, and to make it a bit more comfortable for bigger pilots. But smaller pilots may still want to sit on a thicker seat cushion, or be able to move that seat back further forward at a less reclined angle. So all those things would be possible for the smaller.
Final comment I'm going to add from the Sonex Builder site. Joe Norris said, "Congrats on everyone to Sonex for finally hitting the go switch on that one."
Yeah, Joe was here with us during the development of the B models and a lot of the early discussions on the high wings. And believe me, we had a lot of spirited debates at the time about, cantilevered versus strut braced. I think Joe was in the strut braced camp because his Super Cub, had really great visibility, not having the spar box there. But we kind of decided at the end of the day that this has to be a cantilevered wing. It's a Sonex.
It's a Sonex, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So like I said, we're doing what we're looking at how much can we reduce the height of the main spar where it passes through the cabin, and what can we do with skylights and things to retain a lot of visibility. But yeah, Joe was with us, and he was always a pleasure to work with, and
he always adds valuable info to the forum too. So
yeah, he does, and sometimes he gives some input that we as a company really can't get away with. Nice. It's always nice having somebody out there like that. And Joe, is still local here in Oshkosh. We saw him yesterday, and he congratulated us again. But yeah, he's a great guy and a really good pilot, great flight instructor. Stay tuned. There'll probably be a webinar coming up here. I haven't scheduled it with EAA yet, but eventually we'll do the typical EAA webinar presentation.
Oh, excellent!
And get more into the details of the design and how things are progressing.
Well, I know more than a few of us will be looking forward to that
one. Make sure you're on our press release mailing list if you're not already. We have those RSS feeds that feed directly into MailChimp mailing lists. So, and for anyone who's interested in staying up to date on new projects, whether it be the two-place jet or the high wing or anything else, you can just go to our news feeds and RSS feeds page on our website and sign up. And there are actually check boxes, so you can check your interest area, and we'll only send you an email when we're distributing something that fits within your interest area. We tried really hard not to spam people, and we do honor unsubscribes. So definitely hit that subscribe button if you have any interest at all. And that includes the media. We do have a list a feed that's directly just for press releases.
Cool. Yeah, no, and I'll definitely have some links available below to all the different ways you can reach out to Sonex Aircraft.
All right, sounds
Thanks,
good.
Mark.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you spending the time to get to know me and Sonex better, and I'm sure we'll be talking more in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely.
A lot of exciting things coming up that I can't talk about yet.
Oh, now, all right. Okay.
There's even more on the way.
I was
Just a
already
matter of
dreaming of
when.
high wings. Now, what are we gonna get?
Well, I don't know. There's some things that are related to new designs that are way far in the future that I probably won't talk about for a year or more. Well, and just other cool things happening with the
Cool.
companies.